What is going on? We're live. Hello and welcome to 30 Minutes to Merge. You might have missed us last month. We were super slammed, working on some really awesome things at GitHub, and time just kind of slipped by us. If you're new to the stream, welcome. And if you are a returning visitor, it's also good to see you. So good morning, good evening, maybe good afternoon, depending on where you're at. So today, I have the pleasure of introducing Bdougie Yo, aka Brian. And he's going to be walking us through some GitHub Action stuff with pull requests. So he's going to show us that stuff. But before he jumps into that, I just want to give you a brief introduction to the myth and the legend that is Bdougie. So as always, I have a couple of questions that I normally ask my guests. And so first and foremost, Bdougie just jumped into gardening as his newest hobby. And he's really messing around with trees, which I think is horticulture. I could be wrong. And he's really into lemon, apricot, and plum trees. He currently doesn't have any pets, so maybe chat can give him some suggestions as to what kind of pets he should be scooping up. I always like to ask people what they bought recently, because I think that gives us an idea of like we are still human. And he picked up a garbage can. Shows up Friday. He's super excited about it. Bdougie is involved in open source, and I asked if he had any open source projects that he wanted to shout out, and he did. So it's Team Tau and the Tau repo, and I'll throw that in chat so you've got a link so you can see how awesome it is to interact with Twitch APIs when you're using an open source repo with it. And then finally, I asked him if he had like an idea for like a fun GitHub action, and he said that it already exists, but it's environment orchestration. It involves creating staging areas and then commissioning the staging area once the PR is merged. And with that, I'm going to let Brian or Bdougie Yo take it away. Thanks again for coming, and have a good one.
Yeah, thanks so much for that introduction as well. And I realize I'm not sharing my screen either. I think that would help. But yeah, about that trash can, I just recently moved into a new place, and I've hated my trash can for years. For whatever reason, it's like one of those IKEA trash cans. If anybody's bought a trash can from IKEA, the generic one, the bags don't fit in there. So number one, user experience, you got to make sure the bag fits on the trash can. So I did some exploring. This seems like a really random thing, but if you know me, I'm pretty random. Did some exploring and wanted to get like the hand wavy trash can that opens up. And that was like too intense. So I went with the tried and true. Put your foot on the trash can, open up, bag fits. It's all good. I can't wait to start using that. All right. So I'm actually going to talk about GitHub Actions, and specifically GitHub Actions and pull requests. And there's a couple things that we can probably do as y'all are watching me go through this. And one, say hello in the chat. So if you are watching this, this emoji is probably a great. Just drop an emoji if you're here. Maybe you just don't want to type in words. But something I've been using a lot is GitHub Actions. This is a project that I've been working on for a couple of years now called Open Sauce. And Open Sauce is a project to find your next open source project. It's actually how I discovered Team Tau, because what I do is I live stream a ton about open source. And I wanted to walk through a couple of the actions I have currently. And I think this would kind of give us a sort of an understanding of like what you can do when pull requests open to kind of help the maintenance of your repository. So like one that I'll mention real quick is Codeql. You have access to this today. Codeql, it looks at all your, for this example, JavaScript code. And it's going to identify if there's any sort of security vulnerabilities in the code or some not best practices. And I just want to point out that this runs in a couple different workflow events. So when I talk about running on pull request, this is running on push. So anything pushed to the main branch, as well as anything pushed to the following branches as a pull request, this will be leveraged. And then I also, in addition to this, I've got a cron job that runs this automatically every 56 minute of the 5th hour and the day and the month. I'm not really great at doing the whole cron conversion. You can go to crontab.guru to figure out what that means. But yeah, I'm not going to break down this in particular GitHub workflow, this GitHub Action workflow. But that's like the sort of introductory basics. So hopefully, actually, it says we have people just popping in the chat. thumbs up, thumbs down, yes or no if you're using GitHub Actions, or if I need to break down this even further, because I do want to quickly start interacting with some GitHub Actions as well. But yeah, this GitHub Actions, actually, let me zoom back out. GitHub Actions is a way to add automation to your workflow. So CI/CD is something that folks can really hyper focus on with GitHub Actions. But other things that I like to do with GitHub Actions is I like to have an action to have folks assign themselves to a repo. So here I've got a GitHub action that points to a GitHub repo, and it points to the main branch. And then from there, I'm leveraging the GitHub token provided, and it's going to write a little message. It's going to, one, you're going to assign yourself to an issue, but two, it's going to provide a message of, hey, thanks so much for assigning yourself to an issue. We appreciate your hard work. And I can even show that in action as well. So let's see, if I do .take here, Vortex is actually going to take this one, but if Vortex, if you're watching, I will unassign myself from this. Because he's probably going to wonder, why am I assigning the issue when I literally just said I was going to take it? And that's exactly what he's saying right here. So what happens here is that this action gets triggered. It looks like I got a notification. So that message that I also mentioned, this is getting triggered on a GitHub issue, or sorry, a GitHub issue comment. So I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to unassign this because perhaps Vortex, you might be sleeping right now. Hopefully you are. Otherwise, you're probably gonna look at all these notifications and be like, what are you doing? But for the sake of me just sort of explaining this is what's happening here. Let me go back to the workflow. And I do want to point out that this only gets triggered on issue comments. So you saw me get assigned, you saw me unassign myself. You saw me also create a little, whenever it's created, or if I edit the issue, it will run again. And it's specifically looking for this repo. So that's the basic GitHub Actions. And what's really cool about this is I can create actions and have them live inside of a repository like this. So I've got this is a little more complicated, but I've got some bash here. And what's happening here is it's looking for that .take, and it's going to assign. So what's up, Fry? Good to see you. So yeah, so I bring that up because that's a simple action. But we want to actually talk about actions that run on pull request. And while I do this I can go either two different ways. I can write an action, or I can talk about an action. I'm going to talk about one real quick. And the action that I want to talk about is this action called semantic pull request. And this is an action that runs to actually look to see if you create a PR in a project, will this project, it will fail if you don't have semantic, if you don't, well, okay. So semantic PR, it's basically what it does. It has these different just flags. So like if this is a feature, we don't want to look at Siri, or if we have a fix, it's going to append this to the commit message when I actually squash and merge this. And it's actually looking for this. So if I go to put fix, what's going to happen here, it's going to actually rerun this action. And we'll see it get rerun here. It's going to be running on pull request, which works perfectly fine. But there's going to be some issues with this, and I'll show this once this actually passes. The other thing I want to show off to you as well, the action logs is a great place to sort of see what's happening here. You can see that there's an environment that gets spun up. You can see that in the log, we're using a GitHub token, and the GitHub token itself is actually being obfuscated, which is a good thing to do. Like, you do not want to log your tokens into any sort of log or anything like that. So GitHub does a great job on that. But what I'm getting at here is now we've got the semantic PR title here, and we are good to go. So this is actually, it is passing. And I'm very excited about this. I did some prep work before jumping on this call, and I realized that this is not going to work on PR. So I'm going to delete that action in the future. So apologies on seeing that. Well, let's close that PR, because there's some issues with this workflow and currently the way it stands. And the only way I can show this issue is by creating a PR from a fork. And that's something that comes up a lot in the community forums around questions around using actions, on why this doesn't work, or how can I get other folks who contribute to my project have access to my actions. And before I jump into that, I do want to I've jumped through a couple different repos, and mainly because if I do another PR on open source without warning, my co-contributors will be very questionable and want to know why did I not warn them before I started making a mess in the repo. So I've migrated to this other repository, which is Bdougie/mouthpiece. As you can see, I do love talking. I've almost been talking for maybe 5 minutes straight without even stopping. It's one of my skill sets. And okay, well, I guess I don't know if I'm supposed to be answering questions, but let me just go keep going. And so this is basically because I live stream on Twitch. I have a couple extra Twitch commands that's help support what I'm doing. So if I type in special commands in the mouthpiece, it's gonna return different little commands. Like, let's say if I do exclamation point test, it's going to reply with just test in the chat. I probably don't have to go into crazy detail about how this works, but if I do like exclamation point Discord in the Twitch chat, it will reply back the Discord link. So it's very trivial JavaScript code, and there's not really a reason for me to explain this other than the fact that I'm just sort of flexing code that I wrote 3 months ago. But what I wanted to show off is what happens if I go ahead and fork this repo. And then create a PR based on me not actually being me. So I have a second account. It's called Not Bdougie, and I just also want to double check to see. Yep, we're good. All right. So I have this other account called Not Bdougie. It's in a whole nother dark mode. You can see how it's darker over here. You can also see that my name over here is Not Bdougie. So like, there's nothing up my sleeve. And what I'm going to do is actually fork this repo. And what I want to point out is the fact that if I run this GitHub action, a couple things are going to happen because I'm running this on pull request, which I also want to point this out as well. So if we go here, we can also see it's running on pull request, and it's running on these different branches. We probably can get rid of some of that stuff too as well. There's a couple things that can be questionable about this. I can open up a PR and I can run this. I can edit this YAML file, but this won't actually run any actions. And that's mainly as a security feature. And I'll get into that in a second. I might be jumping ahead of myself. So instead of editing that, let me just go ahead and add some context to the README, something benign, so that way we can just get a some sort of change. So we'll just type in something that a awesome contributor would put would be not Bdougie was here. This is probably not the best contribution. Feel free to open up contributions if you feel like it. I guess we know the stuff in actions, but I don't think these are under. Yeah, okay. So if I create this pull request, I definitely should ask. I don't know if I'm supposed to be interacting with chat, but I'm going to read the chat questions. If you all have questions, I can answer questions. So feel free to throw them at me. The one thing I did want to point out is the fact that I opened this PR. I created a benign change, which is simply this little README comment. And the one thing I wanted to point out is that there are no actions running. So despite the fact that, well, this is my fork. And my fork, automatically, I have to actually enable actions to be able to run. And this is also another security feature that you don't want to fork a repo and then have some actions run automatically without you even knowing. But the other thing I want to point out is that on the upstream, so remember, this is a different lighter version of dark mode. We have a PR by Not Bdougie, and it's not listed here at all. So that can be very confusing when you first open a PR and maybe you're expecting, or if you weren't expecting folks to, if you were expecting people to update your project and do a fork, it looks like your actions are not running, and it can be quite confusing. So in the settings, inside actions, we're going to go into actions. There we go. And we can do a couple different things. We can do one, allow all actions, which I think is on by default. And then we have this other thing, which is around fork pull request. So with fork pull request, we need the ability to actually have this run on fork pull request. But I'm going to keep this tab open for a sec because this is not where our answer lies. Where our answer lies is actually the fact that pull request will not run if we are leveraging if we're leveraging pull requests. This actual event won't run if they're forks. And there's a really big reason for this, and it starts with Bitcoin. We have to use a different event. So for me to explain this, I'm going to open up the docs, and I'm going to look for pull request target. And it's going to be a different event. And because I only have 30 minutes to talk about this, I'm just jumping directly to the answer as opposed to sort of playing around with your emotions and you trying to guess in the chat. But there's an event called pull request target. And for pull request target, what this does, it allows you to run GitHub Actions on forks. But not only does it let you allow to run GitHub Actions on forks, it allows you to use GitHub Actions that also leverage a token. So the one thing I didn't mention as well, and I didn't mention, but also I need to keep myself honest. Yes. So because I'm using this GitHub token right here, this GitHub token is my GitHub token. It's the GitHub token for the organization or the sort of maintainer of the repo, the owner of the repo. Now, this will run because I have access, I have commit and write access to commit and write access to this repository. Now, if anybody who, like, let's just pick on Matt, Bdougie, if he had write access to my repo, his action would run. But because he does not have access to this repo, and because Bdougie does not have access to the repo, it will not run. So the only way to fix this is by adding pull request target. Now, my recommendation is you only add pull request target in places that you absolutely need to have run on forked PRs, because there are security reasons why you would probably not want to have this run on something like your production deployment environment. So I'm going to switch this to pull request target, and that's going to be my only fix right there. And I'm going to commit that to the main branch because, YOLO, why not? So now that it's running on pull request target, I'm now going to be able to see that the semantic PR sort of engagement on my PR will actually activate. So unfortunately, because I did not have access to the upstream or that change, I'm going to need to actually close this PR, and I'm going to have to make the change again. So this is, if you did not have this, there's a couple other things we probably could have done. Actually, let's reopen this. I don't know if this will actually work. If I reopen it, it's not going to actually grab from upstream, and that's mainly because those changes are not here on my fork. Reminder, this is my Bdougie fork. But there's actually this new feature that we shipped a couple months ago, which is this button right here. So looking at fetch from upstream, I could do the whole clone fetch from upstream and merge and push up to my fork dance. But instead, I'm just going to click this little button. And this little button is going to give me that last change that happened. Cool. So, if you're always still tracking with me, definitely just drop in the chat and say, hey, you're doing a great job, Bdougie. Stroke my ego. All right. So now we can see, again, we're on this fork. And now we have the latest change that I did up on the upstream too as well. Ship dark mode faster to enterprise. Man, if I worked on enterprise, I would definitely be working on that all day and every night. But maybe I'll knock on someone's door. I'll throw it over the cubicle wall that we don't have. All right, so we have the pull request target. This is something that I'm going a little off script. It probably doesn't seem like I'm on script right now, but we're gonna definitely check to see. All right, so I don't think the actions are gonna be able to rerun. I'm actually really curious. I'm curious if I make a change, because this might come up as a question. If I make a change to my forked version, which I think, did I create a new branch? I created a Bdougie branch. Here we go. Is this the one that I just created? Yeah, Bdougie was here. It's a good thing I wrote that. Otherwise, I would never know if this was the commit I just made. Okay, so we'll just make another benign change. If you didn't see that, it's basically just this exclamation point. Living in a van, what's up? Another one of my great committers on open source is here. All right. So I'm going to commit that back to my branch because I need to trigger a new update. Now, let me slow down real quick and explain why I had to create another either change or redo the PR. When you run a GitHub action, it's going to run on that environment. So these are actually VMs that are actually running specifically for your GitHub actions. So if I go back into my actions, you could see now we probably should have triggered a new action, and it hasn't done it. And it's because like I think we're stuck in this this action running environment that's not gonna give us anything new. So we're gonna have to start fresh, which is quite annoying. But we'll do it because this is sort of how the world works when it comes to VMs. So we'll have to start fresh. And I bring this up because like this is if you reopen a pull and a fork, at least 2 events will fire, reopen, and sync on the upstream. Yeah, that should be the case. I'm over here going off script. So if we close and reopen, it should hit the synchronize event, and then we should see an updated movement on the action. Let me go back into here and hit refresh and see if we get an action get triggered. Now, let me see. Did I have the synchronize event on here? I do have synchronize. Well, you know what? I think we might be stuck in like a bit of a limbo as well. So let's do this. Let's start from the main branch again, and we'll just create another benign change as well. So we have no, not Bdougie was here. We'll make that change, create another PR. You don't have reopened in the list. Oh yeah, you are correct. Maybe let's try this because I appreciate Vortex. Also, shout out to Vortex. Look at everybody that's showing up here. Reopened. And let us commit that to the main branch. And this is on Mouthpiece. So this is the upstream. This is Bdougie doing this. And I'm going to do another sort of fetch and pull fork dance by just doing this one little button right here. So fetch and merge. There we go. And with that, we should have the fetch and merge. We should have the latest and greatest, which is no, not Bdougie here, but we do have the latest, which is the reopen event. Just double checking. Yep, reopened. All right, so if we now have that pull request going, can we reopen that? Close. And if this doesn't work, we'll just start from scratch. We don't have to belabor this. Just trying to explain the sort of nuances. But yeah, one thing I did want to point out is the fact that we do have a runner environment based on PR. We haven't actually had an action get triggered based on this. We still haven't. So we're just going to give up on this and to start a whole new change. And this is unfortunate about when doing these forks and doing PRs, but there's always the option of adding people to your team and adding them as committers to so that way we don't get stuck in this weird limbo situation. But like with all demos, I'm pretending like it's all working fine and I'm not screaming on the inside. But let's just do this. Not Bdougie was here, and let's create another branch. This will be patch 2. I might have to remember that. 30 minutes. Wow, you coming up with the knowledge. Normal environment run events can lag up to 1 minute. Excellent. Good to know. All right, so we now have a PR that's going, and we're going to see an action run. And this is actually something. Okay, so this is something that I realize also is part of the problem that I was going to bring up, but I got distracted a little bit. I'm actually not pointing this to the upstream. This is actually getting pointed to my main branch on the main repo. So let me let me do this correctly. We're going to create a new PR, but we're going to point this to Bdougie instead of not Bdougie. So, and I'll show you exactly what I did wrong. Oh no, that was the main branch. So we have the main branch here. We have not Bdougie main branch, but we need to point it to Bdougie patch 2. Okay, so now we have our change right there. We perhaps will now finally see an action run. So I've been sort of skipping this quite a bit, but this is important to write stuff here. Otherwise, containers will question everything. All right. And I might have spelled otherwise wrong. All right. So I just want to say fetch upstream feature in the repo is nice touch. That was added recently. Yes, it was added recently. And we could also see our actions is running recently. So couple things I was doing wrong, which is one of the main things is I wasn't actually creating a PR to Bdougie. I was creating a PR to my own forked repo. So that would never trigger an action. But there we go. So we have an action, it's running. We also have an action and it is failing. And this is failing intentionally because we haven't actually fixed it. But what I wanted to say is that this action that gets run, we can see the PR here. We can see the action that's running, and we're good to go. Now, what was the other thing I was going to say? We can fix this pretty quickly by just saying fix, because it's going to want some sort of title. And we can actually look at that action too as well, because I sort of avoided that for a little bit. Let me go back into the action. Well, actually, let's wait for the sys to run, and I'll take a look at the chat if needed. Cool. So now we have the action running. We have actions running from forks. And the biggest change that we made was the fact that we have pull request target, and we just missed it. You can see that this is pull request target and not actually just a pull request. And that gives us access to it gives us access to anytime you use a GitHub token, it's going to block any sort of external actors or contributors that does not have access to the commit access to the repo. It will block access to be able to run those actions. And this is because you don't want actions to be able to run just arbitrarily from anybody coming anywhere. You want to make sure you do know folks, and you're only presenting actions that can be accessed by with a secret token for people who you trust. So I would say only add this if you're confident in the things that you're doing. For example, the thing I'm doing is checking the PR. I have no write access to any of this. I don't have any commit access to the upstream of the repo or changing actions. So I think this is safe enough to go ahead and justify this. I bring this up too as well because the GitHub Security Lab, you will see pull request target. There's going to be a lot of security. They call it the threat vectors of from the GitHub Security Lab. They've got a couple different articles around preventing pwn requests or having people giving access to too much information on within your repositories. So I do highly recommend, if you are interested in using this feature, just give this a little quick run through so they have a good understanding of how to use pull request target. So one of the big things you probably should do in pull request target is not add checkout, because once you've added checkout, could you explain why pull request target is necessary? So if you add checkout specifically, now they have access to your upstream, your entire main branch. They can do manipulations and do commits directly to your project. So why is it necessary? Let's go back into what we originally were doing. We were making benign changes from a fork. So reminder, this is not Bdougie. So this is not me. This is completely somebody else in a different browser. And then we've got the upstream, which is Bdougie. And what we want to do is we want to actually be able to check to see if the title has a semantic tag in there. And if the title has a semantic tag, then we're going to let this run. Now, to have access to this pull request data, we had to actually pass in a GitHub secret token. And with actions, which I didn't go into because I made some assumptions with some thumbs up, GitHub tokens provide read-only access to a majority of information and then write access to specific things. So that's what we needed to use pull request target, because we now have an external contributor trying to contribute to the project. Run the action to the forked on any repositories. So the other thing I sort of alluded to as well, going to the settings, which I think we had opened up here. Nope. All right, we'll just go back into the action settings. So in the actions tab, there's a couple things you can do. If you are not comfortable with having actions run your project, obviously you can select disable actions or allow only local actions, which I do have a little bit of time. I can actually briefly cover what local actions are. And then the other thing, you could require approval for first-time contributors. So I completely forgot that my not Bdougie has contributed to that project. But if I was indeed a first-time, I keep saying if not Bdougie was a first-time contributor, there would have been a pop-up that said, do you want to run these actions from this external person you've never heard of before? So require approval first-time contributors who are new to GitHub. This one's great if you do get a lot of spam or bots that are interacting with your public repositories, but I'll keep it as this. And then for anybody who's an outside collaborator, so anybody who's not Bdougie, this would be, you would have to get this run. You'd have to have approval for everybody. So I don't want to do this. I want to keep it just as is. And the other thing is to keep in mind too as well, when I talk about leveraging the GitHub token and having write access to actions through forks, through pull request target specifically, you could actually limit it to only read content permission. So if you want to actually not have access to any sort of malicious activity, you can limit this to the read content permissions. The other thing that I would like to also mention real briefly, which is GitHub token permissions. And I don't have time to actually go through and break this down. Actually, am I rushing? I think I only have, do I only have 5 minutes left? I'm pretty sure I only have 5 minutes left. This has gone by pretty quick, or I lost 15 minutes in my brain. Workflow permissions. All right, workflow permissions. Here we go. Authentication. The other thing I did want to point out too, as well, is the example of using workflow permissions and for using pull request target. So if I wanted to, I can actually grab, should probably look at the changelog. It has a better example. Sorry, one sec. GitHub app enforcing policies, enterprise workflow permissions. Sorry, I'm just going to go to the GitHub changelog because it'll be faster than me copy and pasting. Permissions. There was a changelog. Again, you could, hopefully we're catching links as I'm mentioning them. But if I wanted to, I can actually set permissions inside of my repository, my GitHub Action workflow. So if I go back into my Action workflow, I could then set permissions as so. So as I'm already doing pull request target, I could also limit everything to read access if I wanted to. So I would have to go through and check all these ones. So, but the two ones that I just mentioned, which is issues and pull request, because I'm not doing any writing to the pull request, I could actually do read access only to the pull request. I don't care about packages. And then for this issues, for my example of the take action, if I wanted to actually add this here inside this workflow, I could do write access because I am writing comments inside of the issues. So this would lock it down so that you can't do anything else with that GitHub token, and specifically this GitHub token here. I don't have time to actually work through this example, but hopefully this is enough to sort of whet your appetite and sort of run with some examples. I do have a couple minutes for questions while I just mentioned one more thing that I wanted to mention, which is bot test repo. Now, my original example was I wanted to show off this action, and this is going to be a local action that I've been working on. So I've got this action where I am simply, every time I push any changes to my main branch, actually at the moment I'm doing pull request, what's going to happen is it's going to actually bump the package.json up a number. What I've done up front is I set this up as a workflow dispatch so I can manually run this. And I just want to show this real quick because I do have 3 minutes. So in my package.json, this is a very common way if you're doing Node.js projects. I've got a version number, semantic version. So going back to semantic releases that we had the tags. If anything's a fix, it's going to bump the last version. If anything's sort of a feature, it'll be the minor version. And then you can always manually bump up the major version as well. And what I like about this is I can, depending on what different interactions inside my project, I could actually bump my package.json. Now I'm going to do this manually. I'm thinking I might have messed this up. I was messing around with this. You can see all these failures. I don't think this is going to work. But manually, I'm going to actually run it, and I'll run a patch. I'm pretty confident this will fail because I do realize I did mess up this workflow before I jumped on here while I was trying to showcase a different thing. Let's see. Yeah, this is gonna this will fail because if it doesn't, anyway, there's a reasons why, but because the GitHub head ref is a environment variable only available to pull request. But because I didn't run this as a pull request, it's going to fail because this won't be set. And this, when I say head ref, this will be whatever my branch name is. So Bdougie patch 1 or 2. Yes, check back on that repo in a day. It'll be working perfectly. I'll leave that. I'll keep it pristine so anybody watching this video after the fact can actually check it out. But that actually kind of concludes everything I wanted to talk about when it comes to pull requests. So if I can reiterate some of the things and the questions that have come up, the reason to use pull request target, if you're using anything in upstream, if you're doing open source, you have fork repos, people are contributing from their fork repos onto your repo, and you want them to be able to have actions running, pull request target will be your sort of ace in the hole, or the sort of way to enable them to have actions. If you want to enable or disable certain features and actions, you can go to the Actions Setting tab as well. But yeah, the biggest thing is the pull request target and trick shot. Yes, that will be your trick shot, is pull request target. But definitely check out the Security Lab articles on security vectors and stuff like that. You can sort of walk down to make sure you're not exposing too much context of your project. So thanks everybody for coming out and listening to me sort of spiel and nonstop talking about the mouthpiece.
Oh, geez, I didn't even see that I got brought in. Like, I knew that I was supposed to, and then I didn't even, like, that's good. I'm good at what I do. All right, so first, thanks very much for coming in and nonstop talking for 30 minutes. It's pretty solid. It was definitely an exercise in off the top thinking. But yeah, so thanks everyone for attending another 30 minutes to merge. I think either I'm going to do it or someone else is going to drop a link in chat, because the conversation doesn't end here. We actually have you come over to our GitHub community page. I'll grab this link and oh, there we go. GitHub took care of me, as always. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to move the conversation from our Twitch chat over to our GitHub community page, where for the next couple of minutes, Bdougie and myself, and then some other hubbers, will be providing answers to any questions that you have. If you have ideas for what you'd like us to cover in 30 minutes to merge, make sure to drop ideas on GitHub community. And I do my best, or actually Andrea does her best, to find me a host that will answer all of the questions that we have from our community. And then I just pretend to be a good person at my job. So, but yeah, thanks again for jumping in, hanging out with us. And then, yeah, hope you have a great night.
See ya.
Bye, everybody. Have a great night.